Hello, fairy finders and fairy seekers. Welcome to FaerieQuest and to part 3, the final part, of the Tower Rock Park in Steamboat Rock, Iowa. There are 19 fairies to share with you in this video. I do hope you've enjoyed this series. So let's go. I am thinking Faerie, F-A-I-R-Y, species here. It is obvious we are seeing a being with wings, and we can also see a head with hat and eyes. The upper torso and both arms can also be seen. It appears that this fairy, F-A-I-R-Y, is in flight or was just lifting off, as the lower part of him or her has motion blur. The wings are lit up, though there are no major spots of sun back where this fairy is. If it were not for the lit up wings, I may have missed this one. This is another really awesome photo. It looks like this fairy was on her way into our dimension when I took this photo. At first glance, you may think that the part of her that we cannot see is in the water, but that is not the case. The tree branches are a fairly good distance away from the water's surface, which means that the part of her that we cannot see is missing in thin air. We can see her nose and eye clearly and one arm. I wonder where she is coming from. This little fairy is unique looking and adorable. He also stood out in this photo, even though he did his best to blend. His head is turned, looking to his right, so we can see hair, one eye, and a nose. His shirt is a darker green. We can see the upper torso and both arms and hands as this little one pulls himself up onto the leaf. His lower portion is still somewhere below the leaf. Here we have a bird-like fairy making his way through the foliage. He is wearing a hat, and we can clearly see one eye and his beak. We have no idea what the lower part of his body looks like, as it is obscured by leaves, but he does have his hand on the head of a cane that looks quite thick. There is no way of knowing if he uses this cane because he has to, or because he likes how it makes him look. He is a bit bigger than many of the fairies I photograph. It looks like this fairy resembles a kind of monkey. I had to lighten the cropped photo above for you so you could see a few of the details I could see. This fairy looks like a mischievous one, very much willing to have some fun. I believe that its eyes are closed and that the eyes that I labeled are actually eyelids we are seeing. We can't mistake that open mouth with the tongue sticking out, though. There is a little girl fairy here, but we see more of her side and back than anything. Her hair is easy to see and the ear within the hair. We can also see her nose, but that is about it for her face due to how she is standing. She also has a pet or stuffed animal in a type of black backpack, maybe. I think it is a puppy. We can also see the curved bottom of her dress and what I believe is a foot. This little fairy reminds me of a tadpole, except it is obviously on land. We can see the rounded head, one eye, the open mouth, and the tail with 3 black lines around it. I cannot venture a guess as to what species this fairy might be, as I've not seen one like it before. However, when you look at the larger picture on the left, there is no doubt that this is a fairy being. It may be the same color as the surrounding leaves, but it has a distinct image. We have another very unique fairy here. He kind of reminds me of Yoda from Star Wars. We can see the cutest little face under the black hat. We can also see an ear that certainly has amazing hearing. If there is more to him, I can't make it out, but what we can see is adorable. What a wonderfully clear picture of this fairy we have. We can't miss the eyebrows, eyes, nose, and mouth of this one. We also have one arm, which gives us the impression that this fairy is fuzzy, almost like soft rabbit fur. I'm not sure if he is wearing a hat or not. I think he is wearing a hat, as it is a darker green than the leaves around him. We have two fairies here, a male and a female. He is up in the upper right corner, looking down to the bottom left corner at her, which makes me feel that they are conversing. We can clearly see her face and her long hair. It's so fun to see them, the fairies, together like this in one photo. I am pretty sure that I don't have to completely label this little fairy for you, as he is quite clear. We can see his hat, his face, including eyes and nose, his arms, and part of his upper body. He is reaching for what looks like a shoe that is only a bit smaller than he is. Not sure if it is a shoe, but it appears to be important enough for this little fairy to check out. This fairy didn't have any problems staying out in the open while I was taking a photo. We can see his hat, pretty much all of his facial features, half of the face in the shadows, one arm, and part of the body. He appears, to me, to be a bit elderly, something in the face, but that is just speculation on my part. Back in the more wooded area, we see a little girl fairy hanging out, another one that took a sharp eye to see. She has long blonde hair, and we can see her eyes, nose, and mouth. She appears to be holding on to something to her left, as her right arm is reaching in front of her and grasping whatever it is. We can see one small leg and her tiny feet. I wonder if this is the first time she has ever seen a giant human. Can we say perfect blend? This fairy is sitting, legs straddled over a leaf, and he has blended better than any fairy I have seen thus far. It's not often we see such a perfect full body blend. We can see his hat, a tiny bit of hair, an eye, and nose as his face is in profile, and most of the rest of his body, including one arm. Certain parts of this fairy can be seen easier in the larger picture than in the cropped and enlarged picture above. It looks like we have a pirate fairy in this photo. We can see the flat hat, his face in profile, and the bandana that is covering his mouth and chin. He looks to be a solidly built fairy from the size of his shoulder and chest. We cannot see all of him, which tells me that one part of him is here in our dimension, and the rest of him still needs to come through. If you have ever watched The Simpsons, this fairy reminds me of Mr. Burns. We can see a head with no hair, one ear, both eyes, and a hook-type nose. He is wearing a fancy black suit with a high collar that has 2 buttons on the front. If you look at the large photo to the left, you can see that I have put an arrow over the pirate from the previous frame. It appears these two very opposite fairies are talking to one another. I won't even attempt to speculate about this because my human brain is tainted with human misdeeds. In the fairy world, things could be completely different. There are two fairy heads here, one on top of the other. We can see their faces quite clearly. The top fairy has made himself a bit cartoonish, and the other has made himself look like a charcoal drawing. The position of the mouth of the fairy on top makes me think that he is whispering something to the fairy below. I always wonder where the rest of their bodies are. This woman fairy has turned herself to stone. She has turned her face away from us. We can see her jawline and a little round ball like an earring where her ear would be. Her hair is obvious, as are her breasts and her arm. We can also see her knee, as her legs are bent behind the portion of the rock where we cannot see. She has done a fabulous job of blending, and I did not see her while I was there, though she stands out in this photo. Sometimes fairies may look like just a clump of grass or leaves, but you know it is not when it stands out, as this fairy does in front of the leaves. We can see the hat, a face with no features other than a mouth, a neck, a large bandana or shirt around the neck and down the body, and an arm. Now it is obvious to me that this fairy is pushing something through the grass, and we can see it is round. A seed of some kind, perhaps? What do you think? Okay, that is it for Tower Rock Park. I do hope you've enjoyed all 3 videos and have seen some amazing fairies in them. So until next time, take care.